So I thrifted this vintage dress because I fell in love with the fabric, but once I put it on, I felt like I had bought a one-way ticket to Frumpy Town, so I thought I might as well give it a new life and upcycle it into something a bit more modern and fun. Welcome to week 5 of my thrift flipping series, where I'm doing a thrift flip every week of the summer. I honestly wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do with the dress, so I just kind of started cutting it up and draping the fabric on my mannequin, and I landed on this V-neck shape for the neckline. For the skirt, I used the layer of fabric underneath the ruffles, which I could tell was bias cut because of the way the fabric behaved, which was great for me because I love how bias cut dresses look. So I draped this simple skirt to attach to the cups of the dress, and this will basically serve as my base to which I can add more details later on. Once I had the basic dress draped, I sewed it together, making sure to finish my seams and press them in place. And I also added an invisible side zipper, making sure to be a good sewist and baste it in place before sewing, which I never usually do, but you really should, especially if you're working with bias cut fabric. Otherwise, you'll get weird stretching and rippling. Once I had sewed the base of the dress, I put it back onto my dress form and used some of the leftover fabric to pin this asymmetrical ruffle to the bottom of the dress. I made sure to mark this diagonal line on my dress and add lots of notches on both the dress and the ruffle so I could pin them together later on. Then I just pinned the ruffle to the dress along that line and sewed them both together. So I had some extra fabric that I cut from the bottom of the skirt, and since the skirt was bias cut, I was able to cut out a bunch of bias strips. I used these strips to finish the outer sides of my cups and the back neckline of the dress. I basically just sewed them along these points, just as you would with normal double-folded bias tape. So at this point, things got a little bit more creative. I thought it would be cool to add a keyhole at the front of the dress, but I knew it could go easily very wrong and get weird and distorted because of the nature of the bias cut fabric. So I ironed on some stabilizer to the wrong side of the dress before cutting this keyhole shape at the center front. Then I finished the keyhole with some of the bias strips that I cut earlier, and it was very technically challenging to sew around this curve, but I actually think it ended up looking pretty good if I do say so myself. Then with some of my excess fabric, I cut out this spiral shape, which resulted in these little flounce pieces that I then pinned to the neckline of the dress for some extra detail and to tie in the bottom ruffle to the top of the dress. Then I took some of my leftover bias strips and pinned it to the neckline to finish the neckline and simultaneously create the straps of the dress. And I also joined a few of my bias strips together to create these long ties at the center front of the dress. I sewed that to my neckline just as you would with double folded bias tape, making sure to press everything really well too. I ended up having just enough fabric for another ruffle for the bottom of the dress, so I just pinned and sewed that in place just above the very bottom ruffle. And with that, the dress was complete. I think this was a really fun thrift flip and a good exercise in utilizing as much of the original dress as possible while also giving it a bit more life. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you in next week's thrift flip.